Okay, we got to stamp out evolution because the lies of the religion of evolutionism are criminal. It's criminal to lie to kids, to lie to children, to lie to people. Of course, everybody's misinformed to begin with, but that's another story. But it's still criminal to be lying to everybody and to kids. The problem is with the definition of God or the definition of gods. People confuse false gods with gods. There's a difference between a real God and a false God. So when people think of gods, they think of the false gods, they don't think of the real gods. And they think all false gods are real. I mean, all real gods are false. It's just like when they find footprints with dinosaurs. Somebody goes and carves a footprint and they say, look, see, it's false. They're all false. Somebody finds an artifact with dinosaurs carved in them. Somebody carves a dinosaur and says, look, it's carved. It's false. They're all false. You know, so it doesn't matter what you present, what evidence you present. Somebody makes a false one. They say, look, it's false. They're all false. That's the way they reason. Well, anyway, you have actual gods and you have false gods. The Bible talks a lot about false gods. Those are the idols. Those are the gods that can't do anything. But then there's the gods that are the real gods, like you and me. We're real gods, that we do things. We act, we can do things. Kings can do more. Presidents can do more. Dictators, well, they self-destruct anyway, I guess. But there's all the gods that are real, you know, are actually real gods. But then people think of mythical gods. Since there's mythical gods, they think all gods are mythical, but that's not true. So people have to understand the definition of a real God and a false God. They have to distinguish between the two. Just because there's false gods doesn't mean all gods are false. There's real powers and there's things that don't have power. Idols don't have power. You believe in idols, you become like them, the Bible says. You become like a stone. So, and not reasoning, unreasoning. You become unreasoning like the stone that you believe in. So, there's real gods and there's false gods. But just because there's false gods doesn't mean there's not real gods. Because there are powers, there are real powers, and all powers get their power from God. Now, if people had this education, had a real education and real teaching of the truth, then they would be able to understand this. But I think even Christians don't even understand it. So Christians, how are Christians going to convey to atheists that there are gods when they don't even know what the definition of a God is? You know, gods are powers. That's all it is. It's a horn. You know what a horn is in the Bible? A horn is a power. It's a power that comes up, that appears. There's a word in Portuguese, I don't know, surgir. I don't know if there's an English word for that. There's a power that emerges. It's emergent. Yeah, that's what it is. Emergent. It's an emergent power. So, you know, all powers come from greater powers, or all powers have their powers given to them. It comes from a greater power. All powers come from God. There is no power that does not come from God. It's written right in the Bible, just like that. It says there's no power that is not of God, or that doesn't come from God. That's not given by God. He picks them up and he puts them down, just like the Bible says. I mean, just like an all-powerful God would do. He picks them up and he puts them down. He puts them in place and he takes them out of place. But they are all established by him, by God. And if you understood this simple teaching, this simple understanding that there are gods, there are powers, they're real, then there would be no people calling themselves atheists. Because everybody understands there's powers. Everybody understands that there are real powers. You can understand that. And if you understand science and physics, you know that no power can generate its own power. No power makes its own power. The power is given, and power comes from a greater source. And a greater source is God, where all powers come from. So, evolution is not a power. Evolution is not an idol. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't exist. It has no power. It has no ability to write instruction that's not there. People believe in a false God. Evolution is a false God. That's why we need to stamp it out, because it doesn't have any power to generate written instruction that's not there. Mistakes alter the instruction that is there, and because of the wisdom and understanding of the design of the designer that made it, it can still be viable, and it can also respond to the environment and adapt to the environment and continue to be viable because of the wisdom and understanding of the one that the source of the programming, the one that programmed it, which is God, who makes all things. He made the elements, he made the molecules to work. Science works because God made it so that it would work. So that's programmable. It's programmable matter. Matter's programmable. The elements are programmable, and then it's programmed inside of you. That means there's a programmer. If you have programmed elements inside of you, it means there's a programmer. Because programming doesn't write itself. All power gets its power from a greater power. No power can make its own power. But this is the understanding or lack of understanding that people have of gods. They think of gods as being mythical, when gods are not mythical. Gods are real. Just because there's false gods doesn't mean there's not real gods or real powers. And if the secular world understood what a god is, or how a god is to be defined as being differentiated between real gods and false gods, and that real gods do exist because they're powers, then there wouldn't be all this misunderstanding. Hello, Honest Angel. There wouldn't be all this misunderstanding of us believing in God, of people saying, oh, there's no gods, it's all mythical. It's not mythical. There really are powers, and there really is a God that where all the power comes from. Because the evidence is that there's no power that can make itself. Every power gets its power from a greater power, which ultimately is God. It's evidence of God. Everything is evidence of God. Nothing exists on its own or by its own, by itself, or nothing makes itself, obviously. This is very basic stuff. And if people understood that gods are defined as powers, then there would be nobody saying there's no gods, because everybody understands that there are powers. And if they understand that all powers are set up by God, or all powers get their power from God, then there wouldn't be this problem of not believing in the God. And there has to be an infinite power source. Exactly. And everything we see is evidence of that, the infinite power, the infinite source of power. So I I'm on a mission to stamp out this lack of education, this lack of understanding that people have. Because everybody I talk to automatically assumes, because there's false gods, that all gods are false. But if they understood that gods are powers, they wouldn't be saying that all powers are not real. There are some, so-called mythical gods that aren't real, like idols. They have no power. But then the real gods do have power. There are real powers. There's volcanoes, there's lightning, those are real powers. And of course, we know biology, everything exists because of the power that's being utilized. It's being generated by different forms of power. All biology is different forms of power being utilized, being put to work. We we run around because we have trillions of batteries and spinning electric motors inside of us. That's the power that we run on. It's called ATP synthase. It generates power that we run on. We run on the ATP molecules from ADP. And there's cycles, runs in cycles. And that's where we get our power from. We run and jump around, not by magic, but by power. Power that's given to us by God, who gives everyone their power. It's so easy. It's almost foolish. I mean, it's almost silly how simple it is, and that people can't understand that there's gods, because they don't understand that gods are defined as powers. And it's so simple, it's foolish. And atheists are foolish because they don't have an education. And a lot of Christians they can't tell them anything either themselves. They don't even know to tell them that gods are powers. So that's why we had this whole thing for years and years and years and years. And to this day, we have atheists, Madeleine Murray O'Hair, attacking people trying to say there's no gods, when everybody should know there's gods. I mean, it's so absurd. So absurd that somebody would actually say there are no gods, or there is no God. Because of a lack of education, because people don't know. You have to learn from somebody who knows what the facts are. And the educational system is just getting worse and worse because people don't speak up. Christians don't speak up. Christians have to speak up. Christians have to educate the masses. We're the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its savor, what's it good for? It's good for nothing to be thrown into the trash heap. So we Christians have to educate the masses in order to be the salt of the earth. And the way to do that is to just simply define what a God is. A God simply defined is a power. That's all it is. That's all a God is. There's false gods and there's real gods. And we, of course, believe in the real powers that are not false powers, and that all power comes from God. Because that's what the evidence shows. It's so simple. I guess I don't want to drag this out. If nobody wants to come in, I guess. Oh, we got Patrick Kadirikis. Hello, Patrick. How are you doing? So yeah, we Christians, have a lot of responsibility to educate non-Christians as to what the truth is, what the facts are. And if we don't get that information to them, if we don't get the information across to them so that they understand that gods are powers and there's real powers and fake powers, and we believe in the real powers, and all powers get their power from the infinite power, which is God. It's so simple. It's almost silly, and all we have to do is just get the message across to these so-called atheists that there are gods, there are real gods, and all gods get their power from the infinite power, which is God. And everybody believes in powers. Atheists believe in powers, and they don't know that powers are gods. You know, it's not complicated. But anyway, we have our work cut out for us. It's easy work, actually. All you have to do is define what a god is, and they'll have nothing to say. There's nothing they can say because everybody believes in powers, so everybody believes in gods, and gods don't get their power from themselves, by themselves. They have power given to them. All power is given to us by God. So I hope everybody's taken care from the pandemic and everything, and hopefully they can get some good treatments that'll keep people from succumbing to the pandemic. But in this quarantine, we got a chance to spread the word that gods are powers. There's true gods, false gods, and it's just crazy for somebody to say that there's no gods, there's no powers, because everybody believes in powers. Anyways, hope everybody's doing good. Hello, Iger. Um, how's everybody doing? Iger, would you like to join? Because otherwise I'll just have to shut down. I don't know if you would be able to join if you want to, but it's easy. Yeah, I'm doing good. As long as I stay away from the pandemic, I'm fine. But I am 62 years old, and I'm in good health. I have O positive blood, so that's supposed to be beneficial. But I don't want to take no chances, so I ran into the woods, and I'm still there. So, you know, my workplace is understanding. They're allowing me to have an extended vacation. So so far so good. Hopefully we'll get more vitamin D too. Get some natural vitamin D from the sun, and that is really good to fight off viruses. Is vitamin D, and vitamin D is something you can store up like a battery too. So the more sun you get, the more vitamin D you get, and the more you can fight off flus and viruses. The better you can. Okay, Iger can't right now. He's got to get lunch ready. Okay, sounds good. Um, yeah, I don't want to burn up all my time, because this is the beginning of the month for the barnyard thing. So I'll just go ahead and try to cut it off here. But it's simple. We got to get the message out. It's so easy to understand. This whole thing with Madeline Murray O'Hare for years and years and years shouldn't have ever happened if Christians knew how to define gods as being powers. And there's true gods and false gods. And just because there's false gods and false artifacts doesn't mean there's not true gods and true artifacts and true evidence of creation and the flood and evolution. I mean, not evolution. And that evolution is false. All right. Everybody take care then. I'll see you. See you on the flip side, as they say.